Love this comic strip. It's one of my favorite. If you're a Linux guy, you get it. If you're not, then it probably makes zero sense. Sudo is the command line term for administrator privileges. So anyway, the whole point is trying to make your MSP do exactly what it is that you tell it to do. I am a huge fan of automation. I automate everything. If I can make it happen automatically, I'm going to make it happen automatically. And I've figured out all kinds of ways to the point where I've actually developed software myself to do things automated. Because the more that it happens automatically, the less you have to pay, as you said, in time and also in money if you hire other people to do it. You know, we have Network Depot has, I believe, about 3,000 endpoints at this point that they're managing, which is not. Wow. It's not. You know, it's not gigantic. There's other companies out there that are doing a lot more, but actually, some of them are customers of Virtual Administrator. But we have one guy that does the majority of the monthly maintenance on 3,000 machines. That's a lot of computers to technicians. It's a lot. You know, and obviously we have other technicians working with us, and their job is more along the lines of trying to handle the irregular stuff. And that, you know, that's a whole other ball of wax. But that monthly maintenance takes work. And the more that you can refine it down, the less resources you have to spend in order to get that work done. So I'm going to try and present what we do. It's kind of going to be a mix and match fashion because a lot of what we do covers multiple bases. But I'm going to loosely go through. We have 6 main areas that we try to tackle, and I'm going to try to loosely tackle all of them. Basically,
how about the push button for raking leaves in the fall? We deal with that up in the north. I'm on the list. I will pay whatever it costs. But if you can automate that for me, Dan, I'm good to go.
I'll call one of the leaf companies up north. Landscaping companies. That was the word I was looking for. Basically, our goal is one command, many machines impacted. So things like run a virus scan on 300 machines at the same time, because if you can do things in bulk, you can do things faster. You can get them done easier. And you can handle more computers. And the idea is that once you get into managed services, it's all a numbers game. The more endpoints you have, the more money you make, the more automated things get, the less time you invest. So what you want is this constant balance of trying to reduce the time invested, increase the stuff that comes, you know, increase the returns on that investment. And it's all just numbers. You know, you want to throw in more computers and try to squeeze out more out of the time that you or your team are investing. And you know, it looks like magic to your customers, but it's not. You know, the secret to a well-oiled IT company is routine. And so that's where I keep talking about Kaseya. I keep coming back to this, but I'll promise I'll try and talk about some other things too. But it really that's where it really excels. It excels at scheduling complex routines, complex routine maintenance tasks. Things such as running CCleaner regularly, defrags, antivirus. It actually replaces Windows Update, so you no longer have to use Windows Update, which is awesome because Windows Update is a disaster. I can't tell you how many computers I've had to resurrect because Windows Update just destroyed them. It just, some bad update gets installed and the computer blue screens or doesn't run right anymore, and it's just a disaster. So this thing is a drop-in replacement. You can actually disable Windows Update through Kaseya remotely, sitting at your computer at home, preferably in your pajamas, and get the work done. And you don't. And the key is that you don't bother the user. Everything you schedule, you can either run it at night when they're not using the computer, and you can do things like Wake on LAN or vPro to wake their machines up, or you can just leave them on. Or you can actually run the maintenance task while the computer is running, And, aside from a little bit of slowdown, most of what Kaseya does is in the background. And whenever we try to script things, we try to script it in such a way so that it doesn't actually bother the user. A great story for this is that I was troubleshooting a client's machine at one point. They had a terrible Verizon data center nearby. They were using Verizon for their internet service. I don't know what was going wrong, but it was dropping about a third of the packets, probably about 2/3 of the packets that came to their machines. And so what I did is I was using Kaseya to access the command line on one of their computers. While I was using that command line, the guy was actually using the computer. He was doing his daily work, and I was on the phone with Verizon support, and I kept running pings. Thankfully, some of the packets were getting through, so I could actually do some remote access. And I was doing ping tests to and from all different kinds of websites, the router, and things like that to see what was causing the problem. And I was on the phone with Verizon telling them, you guys have a bad router. You've got to get this fixed. And lo and behold, they finally, it took me 45 minutes, but they finally admitted that they had a bad router. And the customer kept working the entire time. They were complaining that the internet was slow, but they didn't have to stop to let me do what I was going to do. So it's pretty cool, how you can kind of do that. Stay out of sight, stay in the background. You kind of become the magical little gnome in their computer, and they don't have to understand how you do what you do. They just understand that you do it, and you do a good job at it. I mentioned briefly that it's great at auditing and updating third-party applications, and we're actually adding a module in the next 2 months to Kaseya that is a direct integration with Ninite. So if you're familiar with Ninite is just really cool stuff. It lets you auto-update things like Flash and Java, Adobe Reader, all kinds of cool stuff. Definitely worth checking out. Whether you work with us or not, it's going to change your business. And the reason why is because when you're out there in the field and you're auditing machines, trying to get new customers, you can walk into a new customer's office and you can run an audit, and you can say, look, I update all of these packages that are out of date, and then just pull some news articles to talk about all the different holes. I mean, you'll find 1,000 at least. There was at one point I had the numbers, but it was around 1,000 security holes found in the last year. That might be a little bit old now, but there's still enough to make it an easy sale where you're like, look, the guy you're working with right now is letting you down, and I'm going to keep all this stuff up to date, and then you'll get business doing that. All you have to do is just keep telling them, it's like, look, you guys are missing out here. So it's really easy to use that to get business. It's a great way to keep business because you keep their stuff up to date. It means that their computers go down less often. And that's a key metric for MSPs, right? Where you're not judged as an IT provider. You're judged on how fast you get their computers back up and running. As an MSP, you're judged on how often their computers go down. The less they go down, the more uptime they have, the better you're doing. And so that's something that can be very helpful. So this is a software where you can just drop it in and let it work. But there's lots of different pieces to this puzzle. And hopefully I'm not talking gobbledygook to you guys. Let me know in the questions if you have any questions, or if I'm making sense, or if I'm just blowing hot air.
That's good stuff.
Good. Let's see here. Of course, the last thing I'll just mention about Kaseya is it is possible to take direct control of the machine as well. So if you need to hop onto their computer, take the mouse and keyboard, and get some work done, you can. It's a possibility. So it can replace. It's not as good as LogMeIn, unfortunately, but it will be soon. I'm sorry, Chris. Chris said something about KSDU isn't quite as drop it in at this point. KSDU is Kaseya? Or what are you talking about? Ninite. Yeah, Ninite's not really drop it in, but the integration into Kaseya is going to be pretty much drop it in. It's pretty cool. You'll just select the packages you want to keep up to date, and then Kaseya manages the rest of it for you. It's pretty neat stuff. It's not out yet, but it will be out I want to say July. Oh, I gotcha. I gotcha. Okay, so one of the guys here actually has Kaseya, Chris, and thank you for pointing that out. That he hasn't been that impressed with Nine Nights integration into Kaseya, but oh well. We did script a lot of it as well because we wanted to do it ourselves. So we scripted most of the major packages. You just run the scripts. That also
Gotcha.
works. So okay, so we'll keep rolling here. So Chris, you get all of this. This is like your thing, man. This is my favorite part of running an MSP. Reacting before the customer does. Doesn't happen all the time, but the beauty of this kind of stuff is just really being able to react to your customer's business sometimes before they know there's an issue. I had this huge, this elaborate alarming setup running when I was running Kaseya, especially when I was working full time in my own MSP. I actually still have it set up on my own machines, and I use it to troubleshoot things because Kaseya sends some pretty cool alerts, especially if you get it set up right. It takes a little bit of finagling. One of the things that we do is we have it set up by default to send a lot of useful alerts, and so you can take those defaults and then work with them and kind of expand on them. The great thing about it is that you can alert on almost anything. Almost anything that's happening on your client's machines. You can react to things like CPU or memory overload on a server, or you can. Something that actually happened recently is my desktop, for some really weird reason, Apple's Bonjour service just started crashing repeatedly. Literally every minute it was crashing, and so Kaseya threw like 1,000 alerts at me. It was really quite funny. But we actually have an alert monitor that will shut it down if it sends too many alerts. And so I got that one, and I was like, what's going on here? And so I was able to figure out that there was something interrupting Bonjour and was causing problems. And so something that I wouldn't have even noticed other than my machine was running a little bit slow, I got to be able to fix that and get that back up and working. Although I'm not really much of an Apple fan, so it wasn't really worth it. but you can make your own judgment on that one. But there are other things that happen. There's another example where a customer of mine had one of the new Dell laptops, and he kept changing the orientation on the laptop because it was one of those tablet type laptops. And every time he would change the orientation on the laptop, his Outlook would crash. It's like the most weird thing. Like Outlook would crash every time he changed orientation on the screen. Very strange. And what would happen is that every time it would crash, Kaseya would send me an alert. Well, the alert that it was sending me actually told me what the offending service was that was causing Outlook to crash, because there was more than one player involved here. And so, after one or two of these happening, I called him and I was like, look, man, we got to work on your machine. Did you notice that Outlook has been crashing? He's like, yeah, it crashes every time I change the orientation on the screen. And I was like, well, I know what the problem is. If you give me 5 seconds, I can fix it for you. And I was able to fix it for him, and it just made him like really excited.
You're a rock star.
I just love those calls. When you call them with the answer, it's just great. Another great one is when their machine gets infected with a virus, and you catch it and repair it before you call them. So like their machine throws an alert, tells you that there's a problem with it. You get that alert, you call them, or you just run the clean on the alert. And Kaseya has 2 built-in antivirus solutions, or there's other ways you can interact with some of the other antivirus packages out there. You can interact with that, get that rolling, and basically you give them a call and you say, hey, did you notice that your machine was running kind of strange or kind of slow earlier? And they're like, yeah, it was. And it was like, well, no problem. You actually had a virus on your computer. I've already taken care of it. I just wanted to let you know that we did that. It's an awesome way to stay in touch with your customer. It gets their attention. And they're like, wow, this guy's on top of things. He knows what he's doing. And you've taken care of them. They just absolutely love it. So it actually offers you a way to keep in touch with your customers where, one of the hardest things of being an MSP is that you operate behind the scenes. And the longer that I've been in this field, the more I've realized you need to kind of be a little selfish and a little bit of like steal the spotlight so that they remember that you exist. Where,
Yeah.
you know, you give them this call every so often where it's like just a reminder, you know, the little gremlin in your computer is doing work and it's working for you. You know, you don't notice it, but I'm telling you it's happening now. And they love that. I have met very few customers that were not impressed when you give them a call like that. And the ones that I did meet that weren't impressed weren't customers for long. They got fired. But you know, it's good. It's good to keep in touch with them.